Dear friends, I wish to greet you, and I am happy to be able to take part in a very small way in these very important discussions on climate change and climate justice, reflecting also on its ethical and spiritual dimensions that affect church teachings, our concerns in the churches and in religions at large. I have taken part in some of the previous COP meetings at Poznan, in Copenhagen, a meeting in UNO headquarters in New York, and also in Rio 2012. I have been able to note there has been a development in the issue itself. First, it was concerned so much about how to mitigate carbon dioxide and also its adverse effects at sea level water and also rising temperature. But then gradually the discussions evolved into for the lives of the poor people, the masses of the poor in the world, how the adversities of climate change will affect them or do affect them greatly. And so the question of climate justice has become a major issue in this. I have attended these meetings at the invitation of SISDE because a person from Bangladesh, a country that is supposed to be very greatly affected by climate change adversities, and also as a bishop. I could notice the major points in these meetings that at Poznan there was a question of interest of how religion looks at this issue. World interest, governments also having interest in this. How does religion look at it? How does the church look at it? At Copenhagen, I had the feeling that the issues were so vast and the decisions that the governments have to take were not so easy. And yet there was a feeling that the general people, the poor people in every nation would be able to do in their own way certain changes to revert the adversities of climate change effects. So the power of the common people, their energy is possible to enter into this was projected. In Rio, there was a feeling that at the end the question of agriculture and food security must become the major issues in this. Mitigating the evil effects, that is a point, but then positively we must enter into agriculture and then the aspect of food in the lives of humanity. And here we could see, therefore, a great interest also for people involved in agriculture, the poor people, and the cultures in the world that is basically agricultural culture in all nations. There was also possibility to see the presence of the church in that. And also at Rio, many groups of indigenous peoples were present, projecting the indigenous values that belong to agricultural and creational culture in the world. So in this way, the whole discussions seem to me coming towards this kind of an option for the poor in climate change issues. In this, I would like to recall, I think, that over the last century and a half, the question of social justice began with the interest for the need of material goods of the poor. And then second stage is changed into the need of their inner goods, the dignity, the honor, the liberty that the poor must have. And thirdly, that the poor must not be only receivers, but also actors. Not only receive, but act also. And the fourth was that the poor and the rich must have solidarity, communion in this whole affair. And there was a fifth stage, the present stage, that we need an option for the poor. The values of their lives are good values, evangelical values, values of evangelical poverty that the rich also and the whole world must imitate. Option for the poor. In the climate change issue, I think similar way we must come into this area of option for the poor. As we come into the ethical questions of this issue, I would first of all like to reflect that the ethical preparation in our education system has become quite weak in our times. With so great, almost unilateral interest for the technological and commercial areas in our education, the humanities sector, aesthetic and art sector has become quite poor. And therefore, our interest, our formation is more in the productive sector of life, the commercial sector of life, rather than in the aesthetic, the communitarian, we are in communion with others. That has become very weak, and that therefore gives us kind of an apathy or kind of absence for the values, for ethical values, values that belong together in our lives. In our education, therefore, much more interest should be given to the humanities sector. Kind of a dovetailing should be done into the technological, commercial sciences and the humanities sciences. And then I think our youth and people onward would be formed more in the ethical dimensions for life. In climate change issues, we must recognize the technology, our industry is great in this period of industrial revolution, but that in creation God has already, in nature, there is, so to say, one more technology always than the technologies in our discoveries, etc. And there is a need, therefore, to recognize the basic technology in creation itself. And our industry and our technology is oriented to give service to that, to discover hidden energies in God's creation, and not to think that there is something beyond that or besides that technology of God's creation that we try to bring about. And there should be therefore a great interest in the communion of God's technology in nature and creation and our human technologies and industries. They should go hand in hand to form better civilization on earth. When you think of pollution because of our technologies, we must recognize that on earth, on this earth where we act in sinfulness and in imperfection, there has to be soiling. But our soiling the earth must not, being dirty somewhat, let us say sometimes, must not become a filth. We must not make the earth filthy. And probably that is the main issue in this idea, in this area of pollution out of our technological civilization today. We must keep the imperfections, the soilings, to its limits, so that we can correct it. The mistake and foolishness will be not to correct it, and we are faced with that kind of a situation in our times. We must also recognize that it is the poor people who suffer because of the climate injustices, climate change issues. And it is a person, a friend, a brother and a sister who has a lot of dignity in life, who already suffer a lot, and we add to that. And that is a great problem then. And a question of injustice comes in that. We must take away their suffering rather than add to it adversely. In this climate change question, therefore, we recognize also the question of agriculture and of food. All our developments lead us into so many advances, but then agriculture and food remain a very basic human culture. In creation, God gave food to mankind, and in the scriptures we read about God always giving food to his peoples. The human body and soul must be together, and the body therefore must be taken care of as the habitation for the soul. Good food is needed for the body to manifest the soul, the spirit. So food has a spiritual dimension as well. There should be the daily bread for all peoples, in which we still lack a lot. And our civilization has advanced so much, yet in this area of providing the daily food for all, we have missed a very simple point, but very important point in our civilization. We must first of all be very strong on that point of providing food for all, not to waste food nor goods of this earth, which seem to be very much present in our present culture. We can also note in this that in world civilizations, natural values of the simple cultures of people, music, arts, literature, these culture of people go together with their natural ambient much more. And we see still a great presence of that kind of a simple culture in the lives of so many peoples in every country. And we must recognize this demometric value in human history. We all nowadays give great value to democracy, but the demometric values in simple cultures in the world among the poor must be recognized. The tremendous way the evangelical gospel values, evangelical poverty being lived by many peoples must be given great value in our times. And as we enter into these climate change issues, we must recognize it is a question of preserving the simple a very dignified sense of culture still present among many peoples on earth, among the poor. And so the option for the poor and the option for nature must remain foundational in our culture of development of modern times. We pray, therefore, and we also act on this issue, along with the many poor peoples on earth, with governments, with other groups who are involved in it, and together surely we should be able to bring about or really retain the very basic human values in human life on earth. I hope that your discussions will be very fruitful in this and be a blessing, therefore, from God for everyone on earth, especially for the poor.